I thought this was funny. This is another New York Times article where they are now having utter panic attacks over new Texas curriculum where they actually talk about Jesus just a little bit more. Let me read you the opening line of this article, Chris, and I'll do it in my scary voice. A new state-sponsored English curriculum infused with lessons about the Bible and Christianity could reach tens of thousands of Texas school children just this year. Obviously, you were panicked about this. I am panicked about this. The New York Times is in total and utter meltdown over it. But they decided to write this entire article saying that a quarter of the schools in Texas are going to adopt this new curriculum that teach more about Jesus and the Bible than have ever been taught in public schools up to this point. Chris, before we get into the kind of the meat of the article, your initial thoughts and concerns or responses to the New York Times making this a big deal.
My first thought is it's just another example of the hypocrisy of the left. How often are we told by leftists, Jesus loves everybody. He gets us. And that's always the talking points, right? Like they always focus more on the lamb rather than the lion. And we're always like, pump the brakes there, fellas, pump the brakes. But now when we want to talk about Jesus who loves everybody and gets us, it's an issue. I mean, that's my first observation. Secondarily, awesome. This is actually great news. Let's talk more about Jesus. I think that's a good thing for every kid. So many kids are going through tough times, and mom and dad either aren't there or they're working or they got their own issues going on. To let a kid know that there's a power higher than themselves that wants the best for them, that's looking out for them, I have a hard time believing that there's anything negative about that. Now, I'm not sure that that's the exact route they're going to go here in Texas, but from a historical standpoint, it's the Bible is the most read book in human history. So you can make the argument to study the Bible from just a literature standpoint as opposed to even a religious standpoint. And I think that would stand on the merits alone. But this is an issue with the left.
No, and to your point, every leader coming out, not every leader, but the vast majority of leaders that developed Western civilization and Western culture have all done so on the basis of Christian morality and Judeo-Christian values. And that's the whole thing here is like, even if you didn't have any sort of spiritual connection with whatever the new curriculum in Texas is, just from a historical standpoint, every single big, powerful individual that you read about in your social studies class was influenced by this guy and this book. So to not have it kind of be at the forefront of the curriculum seems crazy to me. The New York Times said this: the original units in the grade mentioned Jesus 19 times. Now Jesus is mentioned 87 times, which, to your point, like you mentioned earlier, great. Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds awesome. I actually think that's a little low. How many days do we have in the school year? Can we get those numbers up? Those feel like rookie numbers to me. Also, of the original 18, how many in the Texas curriculum was it actually referring to Jesus in a math problem? I would like to see those numbers as well.
Yeah, the math problem states Jesus has 27 naranjas and he gives Maria. This is going to get me in trouble. But to your point, that's I'm not entirely sure that that's entirely they're probably inflating those numbers to make it sound even worse. But even then, let's see if we can get that doubled the next time. I think the biggest concern here that the New York Times has is the curriculum was created as several states, including yada, 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 including prayer in schools and religious texts like the Ten Commandments into public school classrooms. Here's the big one: blurring the line between the separation of church and state, which isn't in the Constitution. It's in the Federalist Papers, and it was kind of like more of a suggestion. But Chris, your thoughts on this idea that the separation of church and state means you must eliminate all religious aspects of culture and society in any sort of educational setting, because I'm pretty sure that's not what that means. And even then, not in the Constitution.
Yeah, I was always under the opinion that it was more about the government interfering with the church as opposed to the church interfering with the government. And that was a bit more meaty on that side. I mean, teach their own. Listen, I'm not going to be upset that Jesus is in the school. And I would
Mhm.
even concede some space for more Jewish history lessons and Islamic history lessons. You know what? Fun fact that in any social studies class in a high school, you're going to learn a lot about Islam. Like that's just something that you're going to learn, the Middle East, the history behind it. So why is it that it seems like the only issue that ever comes up is with the Christian faith? I think that to me is the bigger question here. It's only a problem when it's Jesus. It's never a
Mhm.
problem when it's Mohammed. It's never a problem when it's Judaism. Well, unless you get to college campuses, then it's a hell of a
Yeah.
different problem. You're not even allowed to show up on campus. But it seems like the most revolted that we see the left is when we try to bring Jesus into public spaces. That to me always tells me it's true, and they hated me before they hated you. Take some ease in that, and it just tells me that we got to push even harder. We have
No.
to bring our worldview into the public square. And a lot of the problems that you're seeing in America today are because we conceded that. We said, yeah, you're probably right. Let's not talk about Jesus in the boardroom. You're probably right. Let's save Jesus for after the PTA meeting.
Yeah.
And no good has come of it. And it created a vacuum, and other ideologies have filled that void. And we're seeing those ideologies have to take steps back, and that's good, but that doesn't mean that we should take our foot off the gas.
No, you're 100% correct. And also to your point, yeah, I learned quite a bit about Muhammad. Interestingly enough, never learned in a public school class about his 14-year-old wife, which is odd. I don't know how that didn't come up. But also interesting in the cultural standpoint. Right before you came on here, if folks don't know, if they're just listening to this and not seeing it, I am not in the studio. I am in a hotel outside of Houston, and in that hotel room, I looked around. There's no Bible in here anymore. It used to be
What?
that there. Yeah, seriously. I looked around and there. I looked at all the. There's no drawers underneath these nightstands. It's not in the refrigerator cabinet. There's no Bible. Used to be right that you would have a Bible in every hotel room in every state in the entire country, let alone the world. And can't find one here. Like, what does that say about the culture and where it's going?
It's not a good sign by any stretch of the imagination. And I just think people need to get more in the Word. And I'm not a theologian by any stretch of the imagination, but I know that it's benefited my life in a lot of ways. I don't really think it's a conversation for me to have on which version you need to read. But they're all great, and they can all impact your life in a positive way, whether you're reading it from a literature standpoint or you're reading it from a religious standpoint. More Jesus is never going to be a bad thing.
And it's also, just to wrap this up, this is, they go on down here to talk about well, Christianity gets more space than other religions, but I really thought it was interesting how they phrased it. It says Jesus, quotes about from the Bible and Jesus are referenced about 10 times. By contrast, Islam, Muslims, the Quran, and the Prophet Muhammad are mentioned roughly 31 times. Interesting that they said the Prophet Muhammad and not the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ when they were talking about them specifically. At no point in the article did it say anything like that. Again, I don't necessarily expect that from the New York Times, but it is interesting to say the Prophet Muhammad and not, any adding any sort of adjectives to Jesus's name as well. But it
Well,
is.
it is important to note that Muhammad is in the Bible
Mhm,
when
mhm.
they were being warned about false prophets.
Totally, yeah, 100%. Pretty much all of the book of. I was going to make up a Bible book, but I also don't want to be seen as too much of a heretic here. But yeah, no, it's great, great points all around. I can't see how, one, this is a bad thing, and two, how libs try to turn this into like this whole. Well, this is clearly, uh, you know. Anti the United States of America because separation of church and state, which, by the way, the argument that Charlie would make on that is, well, they didn't want the government siding with any particular sect of Christianity. Like, we didn't want them to go pro-Catholic and anti-Quaker, or
Yep.
pro-evangelical. It was all different sects of Christianity. I think they, if had the framers known that, some other crazy religions would creep into the modern culture of American society, maybe they'd have some different opinions. But
There's a
who knows?
great 3-minute clip of Charlie that floats around X
Hmm.
all the time. You were actually one of the first people I saw tweet it out. And you said, "When I grow up, I want to be like Charlie Kirk." And he breaks down how America was founded as a Christian nation, and it's worth the search for anybody.
Maybe we'll bring that clip up tomorrow because it is fascinating. I have watched that clip dozens of times trying to remember everything he says, and I still can't get it down. And yet this guy had it just off the top of his head because
Unbelievable.
that's how his brain worked.